Hi there. Today in class we looked at product rule. Product rule is a way to take a derivative when you have two functions, two things with x involved that are being multiplied together, two functions that you're taking the product of. And when you see that, for example, in this particular case, we have our first function, which is root x, and our second function, which is sine x. And when you see that they are being multiplied together, you're going to remember our product rule. And our product rule is 1d2 plus 2d1. And I'll demonstrate what that means here. So derivative of g of x is g prime of x. And then product rule, 1d2. So my first function is root x. And so for your first function, you don't change anything about it. You just rewrite it. So 1d2. d2, derivative of the second. Derivative of sine x is cosine x. 1d2 plus 2, so my sine x, I just rewrite that second function as it is. So 1d2 plus 2 d1. So I'm going to take the derivative of that first function. Issue here, to be able to take the derivative of that first function, this root x needs to be in the form x to the n. X to some exponent so that I can use power rule. And so just underneath here, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this as x to the 1/2 because that root is 1/2 as an exponent. And so now when I do my d1, I have my root x in the form of power rule, and I'll be able to use power rule. So power rule, I bring down that exponent, subtract 1 from that exponent. 1/2 minus 1 is negative 1/2. Okay, so when I clean this up, I have root x cosine x plus sine x over 2 root x. Because the 1/2, so the 2's in the denominator, and then negative exponent, that x will come to the bottom, will come to the denominator. And so again, this is 1d2 plus 2d1. If you're looking to simplify this in order to combine those two terms, you would need to have a common denominator here. So I am going to go ahead and demonstrate that simplification really quickly. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this down below. We have root x cosine x plus sine x over 2 root x. So you could combine those two terms, but again, this would have to have the same, this first term would have to have the same denominator as the second term. This second term has the denominator of 2 root x. So to this first term, I'm going to go ahead and multiply 2 root x over 2 root x. And I'm multiplying this first term by 1, which isn't changing the term at all, right? It's an equivalent term. Okay, so 2 root x times root x is 2x cosine x over 2 root x. And over here we haven't changed this second term at all. It's still sine x over 2 root x. And now that my two terms have the same denominator, now I can combine them into one term, and so we would have 2x cosine x plus sine x all over 2 root x. And that step of combining those two terms is one that you're going to see a lot, especially once we get into finding maxes and mins and increasing and decreasing intervals and points of inflection. Once we start applying our derivatives in different forms, we will take that step of combining our two terms into one. So there you go.